What's up, everybody? We're back with another episode of the Dragzine Podcast. I'm your host, Senior Associate Editor Brian Wagner. Now, this week's show might be a little more low-key because we all know Clay Millican, my guest, is a super low-key, just, even keel kind of guy. So, just be ready for that. Of course, I'm Justin. What's going on, Clay?
Man, I'll tell you what, it's good. You're right. I'm a little microphone shy. Sometimes you have to drag it out of me to get me to talk, but I'm excited to be on the Dragzine podcast. I have listened to every episode. I really enjoy the show. You help fill a lot of time when I'm behind the wheel driving to these races. That's for sure.
I have learned that from my friends and people that follow the show that are like, oh yeah, when I'm going to events, mowing the lawn, whatever, it's like, it's kind of weird when you hear people like you talk about that because I'm just fortunate enough to get here paid to have fun and talk to racers. But it's kind of weird when people are like approach me about it, like, oh, I listen to your show all the time, or I've seen you. It's like, oh, wow, people actually watch and listen. Cool.
It is. It's a good show. You do a good job with it. And, anything with racing and cars and anything goes fast, I'm in.
Yeah, you're the same mindset me. I like anything that's loud, fast, and dangerous, right?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. I mean, we've been on the road. We raced 5 out of the last 6 weeks. We did 4 in a row. And what do I do on my off weekend? Thursday night, about 8 o'clock, I decided I'm off this weekend. What am I going to do? I bought a plane ticket and flew to Denver and went to the No Prep Kings race. So just got home and getting ready to leave for Dallas. And so that'll make 7 straight weeks of being at the racetrack. And I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, I saw that on you and Jim Howard going back and forth about that on Facebook. That you guys are Tennessee boys, and that No Prep Kings deal. That's an interesting ride, isn't it?
It really is. I had an absolute blast. I mean, Jeff Lutz is one of my best friends. Him and Jeffrey and Christine, they're awesome people, and certainly buddies with a lot of those guys over there. And I've been going pretty hard at making YouTube videos, and my channel's growing really well. And it was a great opportunity to go hang out with Jeff and Sean, aka Murder Nova, and Phantom, and all the guys, and grab some content and see some great racing. And also, it never fails. Anytime I show up when Lutz is running his car, he puts wrenches in my hand, and I kind of love that too, because as much as I love driving, I love working on race cars too. And so I got the opportunity to work on some cars this weekend before we head to Dallas, where I'll go out there and stomp on that loud pedal.
It's always fun. It seems like there's a lot of times when I go to an event, and I even as a media person before, I've been conscripted to help with stuff where I volunteer. Where you see a team might need some help, I'm like, here, I'll hold that for you. Where I try to do something like that. As a racer, you appreciate that, right?
Oh, 100%. I mean, racing is just a fierce competition, and a lot of times, teams may get a little sideways, but when you see somebody down and out struggling, if you can get in there and help them out, that's just the right thing to do. And then you can battle it out when you pull in the water box. That's kind of how it goes. But I really have a blast going to the racetracks. I certainly had a blast this weekend with Jeff up on the mountain. I mean, there is just something special about Bandimere. It's one of the hardest places you could ever go to try to run your race car, but at the same time, the Bandimeres do such a great job. And if you figure it out, you can start turning wind lights on. And we were fortunate enough to do that with Jeff's car this weekend.
Yeah, it's interesting going up there with a turbo car because it's not exactly the most ideal conditions at times, actually for any power adder, but turbo cars and nitrous cars definitely they struggle a bit up there at times.
Oh man, I tell you, I guess it's been a couple years ago, thanks to COVID, since No Prep Kings was there. And I know it was a huge deal on the show when Jeff and Scott Taylor raced each other, and they had some words because Jeff wasn't happy with how Scott staged, knowing that the turbo car that Jeff was in was going to have trouble, getting spooled up. And so Jeff figured out a little battle plan, and it all worked out this weekend, because it is nothing for it to take 8, 10, 12, 14 seconds to get a turbo car spooled. And, somebody with a Pro Charge car can certainly mess you up with the 7-second timeout of the starting line. And it was interesting what Jeff came up with. And I agreed with it. I said, the only problem with doing that is getting the transmission really hot. So essentially what he did was, before he even pre-staged, he started spooling the thing up, and which meant you were on the trans brake for a super long time. But he was confident in the transmission he's got in that thing, and it was wild. You know, you start spooling one of those things, popping and banging before you're even staged. But I don't know, you know, you figure it out. I mean, it's no different when we go up there with the Top Fuel car. I've been really good the last few years at Denver, but you go there, you know, hoping that you leave with somewhat most of the parts you went there with, because to go fast there, you got to be pretty brutal on all your equipment. You know, it's more timing, more compression, more blower, more everything, you know, and just hope that it holds together when you get to the end.
It's funny you mentioned that with the turbo car. That it's like, at the point. I wonder if he just went into his display on the fuel tech and just, we're just going to take transmission temperature. We're not going to look at that this weekend. We'll look at it on the log, but it's like out of sight, out of mind, right?
Oh, it was crazy. You know, like I said, obviously, you know, they don't want you to talk about who won what, but you can find it on the internet. And you know, Jeffrey is the tuner on that car, and Jeffrey's doing a great job. And it actually started spooling faster as the rounds went. And Jeff and Jeffrey had a discussion about, should we change the transmission fluid, because it wasn't nothing that we were doing to make it spool faster. It was simply the old transmission fluid was getting thinner and thinner and thinner, you know, because it was definitely hot.
Yeah, it's the turbo car that I crew. We had one person hang us out one time, and after that, we're like, you know what? Let's make sure that doesn't happen again. And it's funny when you're prepared for that, and people think they're playing games, and you're ready for it. It's not that big of a deal. We're like, we could sit on the brake all day. We're fine. You're the one that's putting yourself in a mental game. You do what you got to do, right?
Yep. I gotta hand those guys. And girls, they had discussions ahead of time, like, look, this is what I'm going to do before I stage. You know, I need to get this thing spooled up. And you know, they all seem to work that way. It's not necessarily that way in my world, you know. Once you put the helmet on, you know, all bets are off. But man, watch some great racing. It was a fun show, and they had a lot of people there watching. It was awesome. I mean, if anybody thinks that drag racing's not healthy, they're sitting behind the keyboard and not going to the racetrack, because I've been to a lot of events, you know, since COVID happened, this whole pandemic thing. And while early on it was very, very weird, but the start of this year, it has been lights out at almost every track we've been to. It's been just full, lots of racing fans out there. And I love it. I mean, this is all I do for a living. And when I see the grandstands full, it just makes me stomp on that loud pedal harder.
And as a racer, I'm sure that probably, it's a little bit of a pump up when you get this, like when you're getting a race in front of a ton of people. It puts a different spin on it, doesn't it?
I mean, it does. You know, race car drivers are, we're kind of show outs. You know, we're doing it to have fun, and we love it when the grandstands are full. You know, that's all there is to it. It makes us try. Not that you're not trying hard all the time, because you know it's what we do and we love our job. But man, it's just something special. You know, you can feel it when there's a full house. You know, it just makes you want to go out there and do everything you can, and maybe sometimes more than you really can, just to put on a good show for those people that paid their hard-earned money to come watch you. I absolutely love it when the place is full. And it's just amazing how many people have been to the races this year.
And kind of going off that, you started out as a sportsman racer, for many years, where unfortunately, a lot of times as a sportsman racer, you're not exactly running in front of the big crowds and whatnot. But spending that time as a sportsman racer, how did that prepare you, looking back now, to be a top fuel racer? Because I think they're both kind of symbiotic. How did it prepare you?
Well, I tell you, for me, I love sportsman racing. I'm still a sportsman racer at heart. I say all the time I'm a bracket racer at heart, and I feel that I really am. Uh, I go to the racetrack here in Memphis. It's really in Millington, Tennessee, but I go out there all the time. And my sister is a bracket racer. Her husband's a bracket racer. We grew up bracket racing, and I take every opportunity I got to go watch and hang out. And I mean, I've even, took part in the Great American Guaranteed Million. I was, I guess, a kind of a color commentator for that deal on the live feed. Sportsman racers are the best in the business. I don't care what anybody thinks. They leave the grandstands when the Super Comp cars run, and what they don't realize is they're missing some of the best racing there is. It does take a little bit to figure out some of it. A handicap start confuses people sometimes. But if you understand it, you will appreciate it, and it would make you go to your local bracket race. Obviously, the biggest money in drag racing is hands down bracket racing. I mean, every weekend you can go somewhere and race for 50 grand, 100 grand, or $1 million. No other drag racing even comes close to that. And the best in the business are the sportsman racers, period.
Oh, that's when I had Frank Holly on the show, and I asked him what kind of skill or, what other kind of classes you want to race. He goes, I want to learn to be a top level bracket racer because they have a certain skill set. And I think that's why you'll see a lot of, the newer generation of, professional drivers spent their time junior dragsters and worked their way up, and they learned those muscle memories and those skills that carry forward. It's like your boot camp for Nitro.
Oh, it's getting there. It's getting there, because when I started, which was a long, long time ago, the people around didn't understand it, didn't know what it was. And, but you got your Eric Enders and Sean Langdon, who are some of the best in the business, Leah, these people are young enough that they started in the junior dragsters and kind of made their way through it. And, but then you got the group of people that, for somehow, some way, they started at a higher level. And I think sometimes, they missed out. There's so much to learn from your local Saturday night bracket race, how to stage the car, what all those orange cones means out there, where the finish line is. It's, I got to tell this story, and I won't use any kind of names for this, but when I first started in the NHRA, and of course, everybody knows me as starting in the IHRA in Top Fuel, but my first few races were in the NHRA, and they used to always, before every event, they would have a driver's meeting. And Mike Klober was my crew chief when I started, and of course he is again right now. But at all those meetings, the first few we went to, they would always say the scoreboards are before the finish line, the scoreboards are at the finish line, or the scoreboards are past the finish line. So we did a couple of these meetings, and we were leaving one of them, and I asked Mike, I said, why do they always tell us where the scoreboards are? And he said, that way you'll know where to shut off at. And I said, well, what are these guys looking at? And he said, well, they're using the scoreboards to know where to shut off. And I'm like, well, that's just crazy to me. And he said, what do you mean by that? I said, I drive by the cones. I use the cones because that's my bracket racing, upbringing. I know where I'm at on the racetrack, but that was kind of eye-opening to me. And it just told me that the majority of the people that we grew up watching never bracket raced, and a lot of those guys are retired and not racing anymore, but they didn't do that. They started in fast cars, and of course they made our sport what it is. And I look up to all those guys, but bracket racing wasn't how they learned to do it, and so for me, I drive using the cones, and the people I just mentioned, Erica and Sean, Leah, and everybody, everybody has gotten better and better and better, and their game is up. But that was always fascinating to me to go to those drivers' meetings and to learn that some of the biggest names ever, were looking at the scoreboards, and they needed to know where they were at so they knew where to shut off. So it's just crazy, how things have evolved.
Well, yeah, I mean that harkens back to the day, what we'll call it the first golden age, when you'd have 40, fuel cars show up because you could afford to build one in your garage. And, it was a different breed back then. I mean, open face helmets with goggles. I mean, it's
I'm not that old, Brian.
I know you're not that old, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about. Like you said, those old school guys that, they'd smoke while they were, loading up the fuel. I mean, it was a different breed back then. They didn't have bracket racing. They had, A gas, B gas, C gas. Like it was a completely different universe. And to me, that's what, again, that's an interesting story, because again, it talks about that fascinating, like that changing of the guard.
Yep, 100%. And then in my time to from where I started to where we are now, it still it was a lot said about it. At one point this year, I had an ear problem and hopped out of the car at Norwalk, and we put Austin Prock in because I had some craziness going on with my ears and equilibrium and all that. And he was amazed at all the things that I did in the race car, that for as good as he is, and that kid is a wheel man, he's like, golly, you do everything old school. Things have evolved, and I haven't necessarily changed with them. I don't use a throttle stop. I don't use a clutch pedal stop. And I also don't use the automatic shutoff. And a lot of the people out there driving, they don't even need to know where the cones is or the finish line is, because they just hold the pedal down, and essentially it's got a wheel counter on it. And when it goes, whatever, 990 feet, 999 feet, whatever the crew chief sets it up, it shuts the throttle, it opens the parachutes and does all those things. And I still do it myself, and so Austin had a blast driving my car. He's like, man, this is so cool. This is how they used to do it back in the day. And I'm like, said the same thing to him. I'm like, all right, kid, I'm on, yes, I'm plenty old enough to be your dad, but it ain't been that long ago where we had to do it this way, but it's amazing how things change, and they change every year. And that's how these cars go faster and faster and faster. And, the crew chiefs figure it out, technology gets better, and it's really cool to have been a part of some of that evolution,
And talking about the evolution and whatnot, who were the racers that when you first, started doing the Nitro deal, that you looked up to and it influenced your career? Because we all have people like that, and it's a theme that I have on the show that I've noticed, that you don't realize you're a part of history at the time until you look back at it. But who are these people that you raced with that kind of influenced what you did and got you to where you are?
Well, I mean, my daddy kind of gave me the how to handle a car sort of thing. And so he's at the top of my list when it comes to all that, my whole family actually, because they supported me so much. But when it comes to, the names that people will know, there was, I kind of got different levels of what I think about some of these people and what they did. So, top of the list as far as professionalism, how to go out and do things and do this for a living, was Kenny Bernstein. He's the top of the top. He taught everybody how to treat sponsors, how your pit area should look, how the car should look. He was the top of the top when it comes to that. And then I mentioned the no throttle stop thing, so I enjoy, once I learned how, and it took a long, long time before I learned to do burnouts in a Nitro car without using the throttle stop. It was Dale Poldy. Another guy that was really, really good at it was Whit Bazemore, but that cool throttle control, rolling onto the throttle, and it means nothing for making the car go faster. It's just cool. It's just one of those things that's really, really cool, and obviously, Garlitz is the man when it comes to anything and everything drag racing. But there's so many people that, you watch and you grow up, like, man, that guy's so good. And, and then another one that, and it's not even drag racing, but one of the people that I've always, was one of my heroes that I've actually got to meet and wasn't disappointed when I did meet him, was Richard Petty. And that was how, Richard was and still is with the fans. He's known for signing every autograph, no matter how long the line is. A guy like that had an influence on me. And so every time you can get the opportunity to watch some of these people that you idolized as a kid, and it's pretty cool thing, especially if they turn out being great people.
For sure. That's some great stuff. We're going to take a quick commercial break here on the Dragzine Podcast. When we come back, we'll have more here with Clay Millican.
Whether you'd like your ride to rumble down the road or roar down the racetrack, Flowmaster has the perfect exhaust system for you, with direct fit options for classic and late model cars, trucks, and SUVs to race-oriented, high-flow systems, fabricated ready tubes, flanges, and other exhaust components that are ready to weld. Flowmaster has you covered.
All right, we're back here on the Dragzine Podcast with Clay Millican, and some good conversation so far. And I did a little bit of, ask Google some questions about you because I want to at least pretend like I know what I'm doing, which, fake it till you make it. And, Peter Lehman kind of gave you the opportunity, I read, to start in Top Fuel racing, which, again, I couldn't imagine what it would be like jumping in one of these cars for the first time. And, what were those early years like for you when you start racing Top Fuel? Because I've heard some interesting stories from drivers, but what was it like for you when you jump into one of these cars and you start trying to make laps?
Without a doubt, Peter Lehman, was the guy that gave me this Top Fuel career. He was a young guy that I met. It's my life story that I've told a million times, and I know we're limited on how much time we got, but essentially this man named Raymond King, who was vice president of TCI, the racing transmission company in Ashland, Mississippi, he kind of took me under his wing and helped me start going to some NHRA races and IHRA races, racing my 890 car, my little Super Comp Dragster. And Felpro, which was owned by the Lehman family, bought TCI. And so on one of my trips to go to the IHRA national event in Cordova, I went to the Felpro company picnic and I met Peter Lehman. And at the end of that season, Raymond called me and said, "Hey, you remember that Peter Lehman kid you met?" And I said, "Yeah, kinda." And what I remembered about him was I knew his dad, ran Felpro. So, I kind of had that memory in my head there. And so Peter ended up flying to Memphis and riding with me to Darlington. And he did that because he was writing a story for a non-fictional class he was taking at Northwestern at the time. And things happen when they're supposed to happen. I truly believe that. Well, I won my first IHRA national event that weekend. First one I've ever won. And Peter was with me and he was writing this story. And he continually asked me, "Why do you do this? You obviously spend every dollar that you and your wife have, and you're riding in this old crappy pickup." And so I kept telling him, I want to drive a Top Fuel car. And we became friends. We're still friends to this day. And well, in this time frame, Felpro sold the company. Well, here's a young man that his entire life, he knew that he would run the Felpro gasket company because his dad did, his granddad did, his great granddad ran Felpro. Well, now they sold the company. And so he decided to go racing. And it was me that got to drive the car. And, and he done a lot of amazing things. He brought Werner Enterprises into the sport. And that's when we had our amazing run in the IHRA side of things. And so the opportunity for me to drive the Top Fuel car, though, which was your original question, was something that Peter put together a deal with the Chicago White Sox. It was a brand new racetrack opening in Joliet, Illinois. And so he put a deal together with the White Sox, and we reached out to Paul Smith, and I got the opportunity to go get my license. And as a kid that his entire life dreamed about driving a Top Fuel car, it's like, man, I want to do this so bad. And when I put the helmet on for the first time to drive the car, I literally thought I was going to throw up. It's one of those things where you think you want to do it, you want to do it, but when it's right there in front of you, yes, it was a stomach knot kind of time. And when that thing fired up and I did my first burnout, staged and left, and Paul Smith and Mike Smith, they told me, they said, drive the thing 300 feet if you can. And I did that and just got a giant smile on my face because at that moment, I'm like, I can do this, and here we are, however many years later. I got my license on May 10th of 1998, and I've done nothing but race Top Fuel cars for a living since then. There's been a little bit of time spent in my best friend's cabinet shop when I couldn't pay my bills, and I spent a little time here and there sanding cabinets just to make a little money to make it to the next race. But Peter Lehman is an amazing man. I still call him all the time. He still calls me all the time. He gave me an opportunity, and I'm still here.
That's an awesome story. And you know what? Don't worry about time. We're here to have fun. If we go over, we go over. It's all about whatever you have the most time for. I've had guests on here before where I've had to actually chop the throttle a little bit because I'm like, man, these guys could go on for hours, and I would talk for hours with anybody, but we don't feel like you need to cut something short or not tell a good story, because that's what it's all about. And I could only imagine what, I put a helmet on a time or two myself. And it's funny, it's hard for people to understand that maybe don't race a lot, that when you put that helmet on, things get quiet all of a sudden. What's it like when you have to do that in a top fuel car for the first time? You talked about the knots, but that's a different level when you got to put that helmet on, and all of a sudden it's like, oh, this is about to get real. You're alone with your thoughts, right?
Oh, 100%. I can still remember that. I mean, I literally had that feeling that I may throw up, and it's like, this is one of those things that all you've thought about, all you've ever wanted to do, and now you're about to do it. And I tell people this, I wanted to just go fast. I never really thought about winning races, and I just wanted to see what that was like, the opportunity to go out there and feel the G-forces of a top fuel car, as a fan. And I still do this to this day. I mean, I did it at our last race. I love going down towards the finish line and watching Nitro cars when you see the tree flash and you see the car move, and they're moving before you hear them, so I just wanted to find out what that was like, that noise, the sound, and the feel of what it is going down the racetrack is totally, you can't describe that to anybody. It's a normal question. What does it feel like? There is no description for that. I have had the opportunity to do some amazing things because I've raced top fuel for so long. I've jumped out of airplanes. I rode with the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds. None of that, not even close to what it is feeling the acceleration of a top fuel car. It's I definitely have that thing where I can't be still. I can't not talk. I've constantly got to be moving. But that is my happy place. That moment that the car fires up and you're doing all these things, it is where I love being. Just that whole process of knowing that the car is going to be an amazing, quick, fast run, or B, it's out of control and you're the one trying to wrestle it down through there without blowing it up, without crossing the center line, without touching the wall. It's just amazing. And I wish everybody could get the opportunity to feel that 0 to 100 miles an hour in 0.8 of a second, that 0 to 200 in 2 seconds, and 0 to over 300 in barely over 3 seconds. It's just awesome.
I could only imagine a small inkling of what that's like. It's funny you talk about the movie, then you hear them. I shot Nitro for the first time at the top end up at Norwalk this year. I've shot trackside before, but I've never been at the top end to get parachute shots. That whole concept got driven home because I'm trying to get my shot all squared up and ready. I see the tree flash, you see him move, and it seemed like an eternity. Then all of a sudden you hear him. I was like, all right, that's different. What I wasn't ready for was how much noise the cars made at the top end when they're popping and cracking. And I'm thinking, is everything at first it kind of caught me off guard because you hear it on TV. It's not it doesn't do it justice how loud the cars are and how fast they're still moving.
It's crazy. And it's funny you mentioned that popping. So what's going on there? You know, when we step off the throttle, the chutes are out. These things, the negative G's initially make them want to shut off because the G force is so high when the chutes hit that the fuel runs back towards the fuel tank, kind of leans the motor out, and you hear that popping. Well, we do everything we can to figure out how to not have that happen. Again, I mentioned I can't not be talking all the time, so we use radios in the car, and I will actually relay that information back to Mike to let him know that, hey, this thing popped a couple times shutting off, because the supercharger does not like that.
Oh, no.
You can actually ruin the case, the supercharger case, because it will balloon the case. It's like poof. When you hear that pop, it's actually can ruin your supercharger. And so we do different things to try to keep that from happening. But yeah, some wild stuff. Some of the wildest rides I've ever taken is not while you're wide open. It's while you're trying to stop. Crews, fans, there's like, cars go through the finish line and then they, turn their attention back to the starting line. Well, a lot of times the action is happening from that finish line to the sand trap. It's a wild ride down there from time to time.
Yeah, that's one of the very few, like, I have a certain level of like fearlessness, but I also have a very high level of self-preservation. And there's certain spots on the track that if I was given the opportunity, I still wouldn't stand, for the simple fact that if something bad happens, you're in the worst place possible. And it's like at the top end, I try to always swing and see what's happening at the top end, because a lot of times people will miss something that's happening down there until like all of a sudden they hear other people a clamor like, oh, what's going on? Like the whole time I'm trying to like look through my zoom lens. I'm like, oh, the chutes aren't out, they're in for a ride, or oh, they're upside down, that's not good.
Oh, 100%. I mean, so many crazy things can happen with these cars. It's again, it's controlled and sometimes out of control, fastest accelerating vehicle on the planet. So it's not over with till you've stepped out of the car and and the crew's there to take it back and get it ready to do again. Some of the racetracks we go to are more challenging than others, as far as the stopping goes. I mean, this year I made a pretty big run. I don't know, 320 miles an hour, and I got out of sequence. There's a lot of drivers won't tell you when they make a mistake. Again, with the YouTube I'm doing, we're putting it all out there. So as you're approaching the finish line in these cars, about the mile an hour light is kind of again, back to following the cones. When I get to the mile an hour light, I usually open the parachutes. Back to the old school. I'm not doing it off of the front wheel sensor on this thing. But back to Maple Grove, I actually had the throttle closed before I opened the chutes, which you're in a negative G situation, and the parachutes come out and fell right in the wheelie bar. So Maple Grove is a very short shut off. Here I am going 320 or whatever the speed was, and the chutes don't open. Well, that gets your heart rate up like right away. You smoke the brakes off the thing, and I got it stopped. It's another story I could tell about going into the sand trap at Maple Grove, but I got it stopped, made the corner, and there's always, NHRA safety safari guys down there directing you which way to go, whether you're you always want them to direct you over by the television camera, because that means you did something good. Well, in this case, they weren't directing me over there, and it was a good thing, because the guy's waving me to, pull up to him, and I am animated waving to him to move out of the way. And I had to make my way through the grass in the old Parts Plus Top Fuel car, because while I got it stopped, I completely smoked the brake fluid in the thing. And when I made it around the corner, I had 0 brakes left. And so, a lot of times things are very, very exciting at the finish line down there. And that was the second time for me that I've had something exciting at Maple Grove happen. I've had it happen 3 times now that I think about it, but it's crazy down there sometimes. Some of the most exciting part is for the driver, and the fans aren't necessarily watching it.
Oh yeah, I've been at the top end when I've seen pro mods have parachute issues, that's scary because those cars come, barreling through at 250 plus mile an hour, and they're making little mini sonic booms because it's like a refrigerator box trying to go fast. And you'll see those guys like legit, they'll make the turn sometimes at night. You'll see little glowing brake rotors if they've had a parachute problem. Now, what's another time you can talk, whether top end or whatever, where, it's like a movie moment where you get out of the car, you're done, you're like, well, that could have ended pretty badly. And you're just kind of like, all right, well, glad that, didn't go the way it goes. Maybe a car started to get away from you. What's another time where you're kind of like, oh, well, that was bad.
Well, I've had a lot of those, and probably the one that people, talk about the most was certainly back in my HRA days. And if you remember back when they did the Dukes of Hazzard movie with Johnny Knoxville, we had a deal with Warner Brothers Studio where we wrapped our car orange and we were promoting the movie. And, I promptly blew the car over backwards. For me, that was a very exciting, very quiet moment. We were racing Bruce Litton in the semifinals. I'm leading the points. He's second in points. And Mike had our car really, really carrying the front end. It had done it for a lot of races, and this thing is just dangling the front end for hundreds of feet down the racetrack. And we're racing Bruce there at Milan, Michigan, and car leaves carrying the front end. It goes into tire shake, and I pedal the thing, but hindsight being 2020, the tire shake had really kind of cleared up, and I pedaled on the backside of it, which made the thing start to hike the front end up a little more. And I'm thinking, I'm Mr. World Champion. I got this, and I can handle it. And when I lost the sight of the scoreboards, I knew at that moment that I had definitely driven literally over my head, so to speak. Pun intended there, I guess, and again, I mentioned a moment ago about using radios. So as the car makes its way to vertical, the body blows off of it. If anybody that's ever seen a blowover, that's one of the things that happens. It catches enough air. So this awesome orange Dukes of Hazzard body just poof, it vanishes. The car gets straight up and down, and it was literally the quietest moment in my life. There is no sound. It is absolute dead silent. And every once in a while, I would key the radio up and just say, I'm okay. Well, as the car rotated on further over, I hear it running again. So I cut the fuel off, I cut the switches off, and I wait for impact, so it lands. I was in fetal position waiting on it. It lands, everything's okay. I call on the radio again. I'm okay, and long story short, this thing slides upside down backwards, I'm told, for 2,000 feet. And it was a crazy ride. You can go find it. It is out there in the YouTube world, but all said and done, I had the most delicate top fuel crash of all times. The car was essentially unhurt, minus the wing stand, rear wing, and the body. We flew Brad Hadman in, our chassis builder. When he gets there, we've got the car all stripped down. We assume it needs front half, and he looks at it and he's like, why am I here? This car is ready to go. But we had him go ahead and front half the thing, and we went to the next race and won it. There's that's one that people have seen and asked about a lot. There are for me, fortunately, that's been like the only real big highlight reel as far as crashing cars go or what have you. But if you do it long enough, it's going to happen. These things are, they're on the edge all the time, but that was definitely a wild ride for me. And I don't want to do that again, but it was, it's one of those deals that in the moment it takes forever, and it is super quiet while it's going on until it's not, but Nitro cars, you don't never know what you're going to get.
It's funny. Every drag racer that I've ever talked to that has, done the whole, they've got their competition license, then they try to check the box to get their pilot's license which is not what you want to do on your NHRA license. They've all said the same thing. These cars, when doesn't matter what level it is, when things are quiet, nothing good is happening. You've either spun or just nothing good is happening. And I could only imagine being in a top fuel car like that, where it's just, you're literally just a passenger along for the ride, and especially up at Milan, which we've raced up there many times. That's a long track. That's a long time to be upside down, thinking, having your thoughts to yourself as you're getting a spark shower, wondering if you're about to become a human pot roast inside the car, which is probably, again, not a fun time.
Oh, no doubt about it. I mean, it was a wild, crazy ride. And, all I kept thinking was, man, we've won all these races with this car, and I just ruined it, because it truly was my fault. The thing was going right on down through there, and I just pedaled it on the backside of the shake when it already had a light front end. And, sometimes we're not as good as we think we are. That's all there is to it. But when we're in the car, we have that mindset that we can make the car do what we want to do. And in all reality, when it comes to a nitro car, you do the best you can do, but it's still up to the car what happens.
It's the old classic, the old cartoons. I got it, I don't got it. That's how a lot of these accidents seem to happen. Is, I thought I had it, and then I didn't. And that's you don't want to be on that backside of that, for sure.
Oh, no question about it. I mean, there's so many things that go into driving one of these things. And you mentioned Frank Hawley earlier, and I've read his book, and he talks about in there, there a lot of times, from the grandstands, people are like, man, that was an awesome job. You controlled the car, it was wild, and blah, 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 whatever the case is. But in all reality, me as a driver, I may have caused that. I might have got one tire out of the groove, which made the car, get the tires loose. And then the next thing you know, you're smoking the tires trying to get to the finish line, and people are patting you on the back for doing a good job. But the truth is, you did a bad job, and you made it smoke the tires, and you put yourself in that situation where you got to drive it like a madman, just try to get that wind light to come on, so it's interesting, when you've done it thousands of times, and deep down inside, it's like, I'm the one that really caused that. It was not the crew chief. It wasn't, a bad call. It was a bad driving job. But here you are getting patted on the back for something that really you did it.
Yeah, it's one of those things where when you know the truth, it's like, I'm just gonna let the myth take over because it's a little prettier.
That's a fact. It's just so fun though. When these things rip right down the middle of the racetrack and they run low ET of the weekend or whatever, that is your team that did that, and you did nothing wrong to make something go wrong. And I'm pretty quick, to admit, as I've gotten older, to admit, hey, that was my fault. I did that, and I think that's just the best way to do. Sometimes it's even better to admit when maybe the team did something wrong. Mike Klober has said this, and I think it was a Don Perdome thing, no fame, no blame. If the crew chief and the driver are the ones that the microphone get put in their face or whatever. And if you want the fame, you got to take the blame. And that's 100% correct.
Well, we're going to take another quick break here on the Dragzine Podcast with Clay Millican. When we come back, we're going to talk about the old days and some IHRA racing right here on the Dragzine Podcast.
Founded in 1981, DART is celebrating its 40th anniversary. To provide extra reliability in high-stress LS engine applications, DART founder and much-honored engine builder Richard Maskin designed a fully counterweighted billet steel crank. With 8 counterweights instead of the normal 6, it can comfortably handle power adders. It's available in a stock 3.622-inch stroke or a 4.000 stroker model. Call 248-362-1188 for more details.
All right, we're back here on the Dragzine Podcast with Clay Millican. And Clay, you did spent a tremendous career in the IHRA. You stacked up multiple titles. What was it, 6 total?
6 in a row, yep.
always got to ask now, because I made the mistake with Peter Biondo that apparently his webpage wasn't updated, and he won like a ton more titles than what I said. And he was cool about it. He rolled with it, but that was kind of like, it was a teachable moment. Always ask that leading question to make sure you don't stick your foot totally in your mouth. And, winning 6 in a row is amazing at any level with a fuel car. What are some of your favorite memories of that time? Because when you're on a roll like that, that's not something that a lot of people get to experience.
Yes, and it's funny you mentioned Peter Biondo, because his website being updated is no surprise. That guy may not even remember how many world championships he's won. He's one of the greatest racers ever in the drag racing world, hands down. He's phenomenal. But winning 6 in a row it's crazy to say this, but you can let the pressure get to you, and there is no such thing as people putting pressure on you. Pressure comes from within, and we're seeing the same thing happening. Not the pressure part of it, but when you get on a roll like that, we're seeing it with Steve Torrence. They've been on an amazing roll, and there are times when that's happening that, to be honest with you, it's easy. Things are just happening, and you're turning on wind lights when you shouldn't. People are making mistakes because they're trying to do things that they're not capable of doing. And the next thing you know, you've won, 2 championships, 3 championships. It just keeps happening. But there are times when that's going on where the pressure starts building because you're supposed to win. No matter what's going on, you're supposed to win. And you'll start to get that internal pressure of not wanting to be the weak link. Everything is clicking. Every member of your team is doing their job to the utmost perfection. And you don't want to be the one to let the team down. You don't want to be the one to stop that roll that you're on. So that internal pressure does, start clicking off, and for me, I was very fortunate that, I don't want to say we were unbeatable, but we had a season to where we went to every final round. That's just crazy. There's just so many stories in that run we had. I raced IHRA Top Fuel for 7 years. My very first full season of Top Fuel in IHRA, I finished second in points. I won my first Top Fuel race that season, beating Shirley Muldowney in the final in Grand Bend. That was amazing. I told you earlier that all I had thought about growing up was I just wanted to drive one of these things and see what it felt like. Well, here I am beating Shirley Muldowney in a final round, and I won a race. And then we won some more races. And then the next thing you know, we're in a points battle down to the last race of the season. And to win that race, I needed to win the race and set the national record. Well, we set the front half of the national record in the semifinals, I think it was. We're racing Paul Romine in the CarQuest car in the final round. And we needed to back the national record up. And we needed to win the race. Light flashes, we've got it tuned up. We need to back that record up. We need to win the race. We smoke the tires. Romine smokes the tires. So we're in a pedal fest here. And I turn the wind light on and I go over to congratulate Paul Romine. Now, I just won the race, but I know he had just won the championship. I go over to congratulate him, and he wasn't necessarily the most friendliest guy at that moment. I think he thought I might was taunting him a bit or whatever, and so I just kind of backed away, and I get the trophy, and it was a weird feeling. Here I am holding an Ironman. I had just won a national event, but I know that I just lost the championship. And Paul Romine didn't realize until his team got there, and they were celebrating more than my team was, because my team was like, oh man, we lost the championship. But his team knew. He just didn't realize the points implication at the time. But it was one of those things where I think we felt like we were so close to winning that championship, and it got away from us. And I'm sitting here telling you about we needed to back the national record up, but we could go back through that entire season. Any one round somewhere would have made us now would be the 7-time world champions in IHRA. And so I think that was a great learning process for a very young team. That really the only person on that team that had any experience was our crew chief, Mike Klober. So the following season, I think it made us realize that every single run is the most important run you're about to make, because that first year we felt like that one run in that final was so important to win it all, and we didn't. So I think it gave us a mindset of every qualifying run, every round is the most important run you're going to make. And when your entire team buys into that concept, you win 6 straight world championships. And again, back to Steve Torrance, that's happening with them. They realize every single run, they just don't make mistakes. And fortunately, they've got the budget in place to be able to put the best parts in place every single run. And that's how you look at it. There's so many stories in our, again, raced IHRA Top Fuel for 7 years, and we won 6 straight world championships, 51 national events. And IHRA back then, they would have 10 to 12 races a year is all they would have. And we won 50 national events out of however many possibilities it was, 51, excuse me, but unbelievable, and when you get on that roll, it's good. You ride that wave until you're not, so I know what it feels like, and it's amazing to go to the racetrack knowing that A, you should win, and B, you don't want to be the guy that screws it up and don't win.
And I think at the same time, you go off of that, you look at Torrance's team, they look like they are always having fun. They just look loose. And I think that I akin that a lot to, like, when you look at like a lot of MMA fighters, the guys that go in there that just look like they're loose and they're ready, like they're not tense. You know what I mean? It's hard for someone to describe that's never been in that position, but when you're loose like that, it honestly, I think it makes a difference, especially in drag racing, because it puts you in that positive side of the mental game that you can deal with anything.
Oh, you just, you have the ability to know that you're going to win. That is a mindset, and it's one of those things that some people just kind of naturally have that. Peter Biondo's a good guy to mention on that. And when every person on your team knows that they've done their job correctly, and they believe in the person beside them, those win lights just come on. It's pretty amazing.
Some people might confuse confidence and cockiness there, and it's confidence. It's just that you are showing up and you know that you have done your job and you're going to make stuff happen, and that makes a huge difference to these teams.
No doubt about it. There are people that have the intense look, and there are people that are loose when they go about it. It's just every person is different how they handle the pressure, and you just got to be yourself. For me, I'm the smiling guy that smiles win or lose, because I know that I am very fortunate to be a guy that puts a helmet on for a living. I mean, we were talking about Peter Lehman earlier. I mean, I was working at a Kroger food warehouse is what I was doing for a living. I was married, I had kids, and I got this opportunity to go and do this, and so I'm going to smile. I know win or lose that I am driving a race car, paying my bills, and I'm not punching a clock at the Kroger food warehouse. Now, on the flip side of that, when I quit my job there in May 10th of 98, when I got my Top Fuel license, I signed up for, the racer's full-time life, which means there is no retirement, there is no 401k, there is no health insurance benefits, all those things. And me and my wife talk about it. I'm 55 years old now, and it's like, we can never retire. And me and her laugh about it. We're living our retirement every day, but it also means that we're going to continue working, until we're older and grayer, but we love our life, and drag racing has provided that, so I absolutely love everything about drag racing, even the bad stuff and the stuff that, we're all continually trying to improve, whether it's having fans in the grandstands during a pandemic or trying to explain bracket racing so that more people will go out and do it. Drag racing is my favorite thing there is out there.
Clay, you mentioned that about, always, constantly having to work, retirement plan. And one of my good friends says this all the time. When people question what I do when it comes to racing, I just tell them I would rather have cool stories in the retirement home than be rich and retired and not have lived a life. And I'm like, you know what? That's deep, man. That's deep, and that hits home.
Oh, I mean, it is, like I say, our stories are endless. There's so many stories, and a lot of them are just getting to the racetrack.
Oh yeah,
It's just sometimes that's the biggest part of the battle, just getting there. And as far as the old folks home goes, they'll probably put me in a rocking chair off in the corner because they're going to get sick of hearing the same old stories over and over again. But it's what we do. Every day is an adventure. And I do not regret one single bit. Leaving the security of having a great job. Because I get to spend every day, with my wife and with the people that work on the race car that have the same love for racing that I do. And, you can't get that necessarily at a normal job.
no, not at all. It's funny you mentioned that sometimes the adventure is just getting to the track, and that's the other thing I always tell people we've talked about on the show. There's three parts to a race: getting to the race, what happens to the race, and getting home. And I know I've had some wild stuff happening on the front half and back half where you're like trailer tires blowing out, seeing interesting characters at rest stops at 3 a.m. I mean, you look like running out of gas on the interstate because you made a slight miscalculation. What's a good road story that you might have that would entertain folks?
Obviously I've got a lot of them, and it's funny. I've been married. I think this is going on 35, 36 years. I married my high school sweetheart, and it's crazy, but her and I have a love for good truck stops. It's one of those things, and a lot of people, they think truck stops are horrible, but you can find great ones out there. You can. And so, we kind of travel the same paths all the time. We have the same stops that we stop at. Her and I will drive to about half of the NHRA races. If you draw a circle of 12 hours around Memphis, we drive to those races. I've got an old toter home, and we bring our dogs but some of the, funny stories, I'm going to go back to my IHRA days. There's a kid, he's not a kid anymore. He's now married and got kids himself, but he and I and another guy, we drove the Werner truck, the Werner big truck. And for whatever reason, we had to get from one race to the next, and we have no time. And we had done swapped off driving 2 or 3 times amongst ourselves, trying to get a little nap. And I pull over on the side of the road and hop out, and Buggy is this guy's name. He's at Comp Cams now. And I wake him up because he had napped off in the passenger seat when I pulled off on the side of the interstate. And he's like, "What are you doing?" I said, "It's time to go run." And he didn't even hesitate. He hopped out, and me and him literally were racing each other around the trailer. I mentioned Richard Petty too. I was Richard Petty trying to go around the last turn at Daytona. All I'm trying to do is get that heart rate up so that I can make it to the next stop. That's one of those things that now at 55 years old, when that sleep monster gets on my shoulder, we find a rest stop, or we find a truck stop, because you can just push yourself to where you're hallucinating driving those trucks up and down the road, and it's scary, dangerous. I think about some of that stuff, it's like, oh, you were an idiot. When you're that sleepy that you got to get out and start running, you need to stop. It's just part of it.
I am 100% stealing that trick. 100%, because me and my friends are dumb enough. We will absolutely use that. We're at an advanced age enough where we shouldn't, but we will use that. That's an amazing, that's a pro tip right there. You should charge for advice like that.
It's a true story. You could call Buggy right now and he'll tell you, me and him literally were making laps around that whole rig. There's trucks coming by. They had to think that one of us was trying to beat up the other because he was leading sometimes and I was leading others. But, you know, it's just crazy what you do on the road. I mean, there's just so many stories of, again, you know, flat tires. Another quick one. We're driving to Indy, and this was before we had a toter home. We had a dually with a gooseneck trailer that had living quarters in the front, and that was what me and Donna used for going to the races. And I had a blowout, and she videos it, and I posted it on Instagram. And I had a friend that works at a tire company that called me a little while later, and the next thing I know, I had 6 tires show up at the house because he was tired of seeing me change tires on the side of the road, you know. But it's just part of it, you know, blowouts, wheel bearings, you name it, trucks quitting, it's just crazy.
Yeah, it's one of those things. When I got my first trailer, the third thing I bought for the trailer was one of the little deals where you drive up on it to change the tire, because I'd seen where we had to use that at one point. I'm like, all right, gonna want to deal with that. Learn the hard way on one of our trips of speed video that a triaxle toy hauler, yeah, that trick doesn't work, and we had to invest in a bottle jack. And yeah, it's the stuff on the road that, like, again, you do stuff where you see stuff, you're like, why did I do that? At what point was that a good idea?
I got to tell one quick story, and it wasn't me. And I just mentioned Buggy, and there was another guy that was always in the Werner truck, and his name's Keelan Hooten. He is an amazing guy, helped us on the Werner car for years and years. And so we were on a run of crazy races during the IHRA time, because we would do about 10 NHRA races a year at the peak of our Werner Enterprises sponsorship. And so we were doing all these crazy back-to-back, you know, whether it was from Rockingham to Edmonton, Alberta, Canada, to Pomona, California. And so having Werner as a sponsor, you know, from time to time when we were doing those runs, they would provide us a truck driver, which was awesome. You know, so Keelan was not going to allow anybody to drive that Werner truck without him being in it. And so we were on the way, I think it might have been Sonoma, doesn't matter, through the Rocky Mountains. Everybody that's been through there, they see those runoffs, you know, for big trucks when they lose their brakes, to have a place to go. So Werner was sent us a truck driver, and Keelan's driving, and he got hung up behind a couple motorhomes, which can send us off down a path of telling people, if you see a big truck coming down a hill, get the heck out of the way, because they only got so much air. And when they run out of air, they're done. So Keelan got hung up behind some motorhomes, run out of air, and he knows he has no option but to make it to the bottom of the hill and use the runoff, hauling the Werner top fuel car. And so the truck driver was in the bunk in the back asleep. And he says, you know, it was the scariest thing of his entire life. He knows he's fixing to have to hit this runoff, but he had the presence of mind to reach back and slap the curtain to the sleeper and tell the Werner guy, hey, you probably want to get up and see this and not miss it sitting in the sleeper back there. And so the old Werner truck made its way into the runoff, and it was kind of obviously very, very scary for him, but it was kind of funny for us when I got to the racetrack, and under our entire truck and trailer, there was pea gravel everywhere that we continually had to pick out for months and months and months. But yeah, I was glad I was not part of that one.
It's like putting a car in a sand trap. You're finding pea gravel for the rest of the season. You're like, I thought I got all of this.
That's a fact. And we were digging it out from under our trailer. We were literally taking pry bars, raising the floor up to get the pea gravel out from under the cross braces in that thing. But road stories sometimes are better than the racetrack stories.
Yes, they are. Now, you listen to the show, you know I always like to throw a fun question at the end. And, you know, we've done time travel, unlimited bank accounts, building your own series. Well, I'm going to make you an artist, Clay. If you are now in charge of building the Mount Rushmore for top fuel drivers. We got a mountain somewhere, we're going to do it. We'll figure it out later. who are the 4 drivers that you would put on the Mount Rushmore for Top Fuel Racing?
Top Fuel only.
Top Fuel only, because
Fuel only.
We could open up all of drag racing. That'd be a giant can of worms. So we're going to make it slightly easier and just do Top Fuel only.
Top Fuel only. Well, I mean, one of them's pretty obvious. It's Big Daddy Don Garlits. It's Kenny Bernstein. It's Joe Amato. And, the last one is somebody that, maybe doesn't get as much accolades as he should, but it probably for me would be, like Gary Ormsby. Gary Ormsby was, he was a guy that a lot of it was pretty cool what him and his team did. They covered up the throttle pedal to make people wonder what the heck was going on when they had something else that they were doing that other teams were paying attention to the throttle pedal, but it was something else. As a young guy watching back then, I kind of thought that was cool, but that's pretty cool. I could go on and on. There's a lot of people. Darrell Russell, is somebody that I think about, Blaine Johnson, so for me, it might be more than 4, I could go on that list, but I'll kind of leave it at that.
Yeah. It's one of those questions where, we have, sometimes we'll try to come up with op-ed ideas. I'm like, man, that's like the Mount Rushmore drag race. I'm like, you almost have to get specific. And even then you're always going to piss somebody off because you leave somebody off. And it's a very difficult process for sure.
It really, really is. And I've been trying to figure out, is that Scott Coletta on the Winston poster there behind you?
Yes, it is.
How about that?
1995, Coletta, John Force, and Warren Johnson.
Yes, sir. That's a cool poster. I had some of those. And, again, that's a tough question because, a lot of people kind of think of Scott as, funny car, Top Fuel, but that guy won in both. He was an amazing wheelman and a wild man at the same time. Had no fear, none whatsoever.
If any of our viewers or listeners get the chance, go on YouTube and look up one of the old show's winners when they had Connie on there and they had a young Scott Coletta helping tune the car, run the car, and a wild Doug Coletta appears as well. Full head of hair, just definitely in his prime. And when another thing a lot of people forget about Doug Coletta is he used to be one heck of a circle burner driver, open wheel. You want to talk about something interesting was I was watching on Flow Racing a event where Doug was running up against Tony Stewart as well as Jeff Gordon in a race. And I mean, Doug looks like he could do your taxes, but he will straight crush your head in just about anything with a steering wheel.
Not only was he racing against them, he won the championship.
Yep.
Doug Coletta is no joke behind the wheel. I call him the Iceman. He is, he's rock solid. He doesn't make mistakes. And he's one of the guys that I actually enjoy racing the most just because of that. Because you're not going to get a give me. You better be ready and 100% focused on what you're doing because that guy is a stone cold killer behind the wheel of a race car.
Especially driving a wingless USAC car because those things, they're angry. You talk about a top fueler not doing what you want to do. You're taking something with a 410 engine in it and trying to whip around a track with no wing, no downforce. They are a handful to watch.
He's a bad dude.
Definitely. Well, Clay, our time here is coming to an end. I'd like to give my guests their opportunity to channel their inner John Force and thank all their sponsors and who they need to thank. So I'm going to flip it over to you, my friend, so you can do your deal and thank who you need to thank.
Well, I appreciate that, but I'm certainly not going to try to imitate John Force because I want you to understand what I'm saying. so I'm going to leave that one out there. But, I've done this for a long, long time. There's so many people that have helped me get to where I'm at. And, Parts Plus has been with me. This is the 11th year. That is a long, long time running sponsorship. And there's so many vendors to go along with it. But, Doug Stringer, who owns my team, has put in and gave everything he has to give us the opportunity to go out there and win races. And, old Mike Klober, we won all those IHRA championships together. And he kind of went away for a while, and we begged him to come back, and we're out there, thrashing, making final rounds, doing things again together, and it's just amazing. But it's way too many people to mention this part of this, that 20 plus years of doing it is pretty much anybody and everybody that I have, come in contact with, fans, people, you name it. I love my job, love the sport of drag racing, and love the opportunity to come on Dragzine and talk about it.
Well, we definitely appreciate you come on. Make sure you follow Clay on Facebook. He does answer messages because I messaged him there to get the setup. So that was definitely awesome. And, I've got to thank my sponsors, of course, Performance Distributors, Airflow Research, ProCharger, Holly, MSD, Flowmaster, Mosier Engineering, Comp Cams, Fuel Air Spark Technology, Edelbrock, Manley, JE Pistons, and Dart. Clay, it was awesome to have you on the show. And if we get the opportunity, I'll definitely have back on in the future.
Man, I appreciate it. Enjoy the show and look forward to the next one.